And
right? That's what you're
expanding each character with the different types of sound processing to...
Yeah, he's trying to show the TV body and chip body in the characters. He's making these technological apparatuses be part of their being. He says, the synthesizer section, one ARP, one Minimoog, is used as an instrumental voice or voices and for sound effects purposes. The ARP output is taken stereo direct into the board. The Minimoog output is a mono direct feed to a quad pan pot on the master board. The player monitors himself on a small amp. The guitarist will require a stereo direct from a pair of acoustic studio amps. The bass is received from an acoustic studio amp. In brackets after the guitarist, he had electric 6, electric 12, electric mandolin, and transducerized acoustic 6. The drums, snare drum, bass drum, 3 tom-toms, hi-hat, ride, crash, rivet, and tiny cymbals, plus 4 cowbells and tambourine, are to be received in quad and mic'd in this manner. 1 bass drum mic, 1 snare hi-hat mic, 1 mic each tom-tom, 1 overhead mic favoring the cowbells. The bass drum front head should be removed as well as the bottom tom-tom heads. The overhead and tom-tom mics should all be keypacks tightly and reconstituted with the EMT in deep mode or its equivalent. The player can monitor the whole mix via headphones. Also required full lighting plus strobes, 1 red, 1 blue, 1 green, and a large screen for rear projection over the orchestra. The right side of the stage is the earth during the force.
I find this very interesting because this is another aspect we haven't talked about, technical specifications that go with playing live, or his setting was very complex because he had a lot of people on stage, and sometimes he was playing in big venues, and there are a lot of things that get complicated when you have to amplify for the musicians in the stage and for the audience. And, when you have this surround type of environment, because you get some feedbacks, and you have all types of interference and noises, and because he was such a perfectionist, I mean the sound checks I suppose he will do for a long time to check that each instrument is sounding good, and that if they move on the stage, there is no... Sometimes, for example, from the speakers, from the monitors on the stage, you get the sound of radio waves, so you have to move them and all these type of things.
Right.
So it's very interesting to see all the considerations that he put into his music, into the performance of the theatricals, of the PA, all these different types of effects to enhance
when you worked in the nightclubs, in Mexico City, you had to build the set and take it down. The other guys are too stoned. Did you organize the soundboard, you yourself?
Well, it depends, because usually you played with 1 or 2 bands, and you had to go and make the sound check in the evening, and you have to, when you play after somebody else, you have to set up very fast, and sometimes you do a checkup, but the things are different when you are actually playing. And you have to have a good engineer. Sometimes in the clubs or in the places where you're playing, there's somebody who knows the equipment and is always there, so he knows more or less what to do, but that's not always the case. And sometimes it was very stressful because the musicians are more concerned with the groupies than with the equipment. And
yeah, Larry, Larry especially. Larry is always into the groupies.
With the orgy after the concert.
Yeah.
Yes, it's but
you can understand partly what he's talking about here.
Yes, I understand everything he's talking about, and I find it very interesting because he's, for example, the Moog synthesizer was a mono synthesizer. It's an analog type of synthesizer, and the harp, it was like a new type of synthesizer at the time, and that already has stereo, so that was maybe polyphonic too, because before most synthesizers were monophonic, and that's why he says it only needs one output. Doesn't have to be stereo. And I remember something in 1968, the first commercial record of electronic music was actually this Switch on Bach by Wendy Carlos.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the first electronic record that became a hit, it was on the hit parade, and they sold like 15,000 copies of that, was Bach music.
Yeah.
So that's also like marking something, some change.
Yeah.
And it was a really hard thing to do with that type of synthesizer. They had to make like a collage of what they were playing, because you don't have the polyphonic type of sequencers we have now. They will have to do parts of the tracks and of the music and then put them all together, and at the end have this illusion that everything is played at once all together. But it was really a lot of work to do that and to reproduce orchestral sounds with synthesizers. And that record really made electronic music popular, because that record made like something, a new technology, be better known by a wider public, like this type of science fiction instruments. But that was something that my mentor, Antonio Rosek, was always criticizing, that in most science fiction movies, they have orchestras. It's like, instead of having really avant-garde electronic music. And only this Forbidden Planet, that was the first movie with complete electronic music. And it's also about a monster and a cave and all these types of things.
Yeah.
Zappa likes.
Right. Yeah.
But, I just remember that when he's talking about the Moog synthesizer. Or Moog, I don't know how to say it.
Let's play this a little bit. What do I have on? When that... So you take that off. So I'll play a bit of Switched On Bach, since it was a historical...
Yes, Bach made electronic music popular. What about that?
Wow. That's amazing.
Wow. It is.
So this is Switched On Brandenburg Concerto Number 3.
Well, we get the idea.
Yeah.
But we can, we can really see what they thought was like an orchestra sound, artificial instrument I mean, for us, doesn't sound like an orchestra. It really sounds
Right.
like a Game Boy.
Right.
Like a video
And
game.
so that is,
music.
that's electrically altered, well, what did Frank say? Electronically altered normal instruments.
No, this is electric generated.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to simulate the sound, simulate the original.
Who was the composer of that?
Right.
That's
Wendy Carlos.
from Bach, but the one that made it, it's he used to be a man, so it's like a Zappa screen movie. Yeah, his name was Walter Carlos, and the girlfriend became lesbian, and he operated himself and became Wendy Carlos. So it's
So
like
he could be with his
Zappa
girlfriend?
story.
Right, so that he could be with
I
his
don't know what
girlfriend?
happened. But yes, I remember somebody told me that story, like, wow.
Right.
Like,
So Wendy Carlos, as a kid, she was a big deal for you. As a kid, hearing about this woman, or be a guy back then, right? So
well,
what
yes,
did you guys
it was
hear?
sort of a novelty of people being transgender and transsexual and all these other types of identities we have under the electric environment.
Right. Looking up the wiki entry.
You can not only be quadrophenic, but actually change your mid-body into another gender.
Right. Gender transition. Walter Carlos became aware of her gender dysphoria at an early age. She told Playboy magazine, "I was about 5 or 6. I remember being convinced I was a little girl, much preferring long hair and girls' clothes and not knowing why my parents didn't see it clearly." In 1962, age 22, when she moved to New York City to attend graduate school at Columbia University, she came into contact for the first time with information about gender issues, including the work of Harry Benjamin. In early 1968, she began hormone treatments and soon began living full-time as a woman. In her Whole Earth Catalog review of synthesizers in 1971, Carlos asked to be credited simply as W. Carlos. After the financial success of Switched on Bach, Carlos was finally able to undergo sex reassignment surgery in May 1972. Carlos chose to announce herself as the featured interview in May 1979's Playboy magazine, picking Playboy because, quote, the magazine has always been concerned with liberation, and I'm anxious to liberate myself. She has since come to regret the interview, has created a short list of the cruel page on her website, Short List of the Cruel, and gave Playboy's editors 3 Black Leaf Awards, meaning arrogant, selfish prig with a genuine sadistic streak. Carlos prefers not to discuss her transition and has asked that her privacy regarding the subject be respected. In 1998, she sued the songwriter-artist Momus for $22 million for his satirical song Walter Carlos, which appeared on the album The Little Red Songbook, released in 1998, which suggested that if Wendy could go back in time, she could marry Walter. The case was settled out of court, with Momus agreeing to remove the song from subsequent editions of the CD and owing $30,000 in legal fees. So she didn't get the $22 million. So we go to her website, look at the...
She wanted 22 million.
Right. So, yeah. So clicking on her official site, let's see her cruel list. It's not obvious. Warnings.
But many electronic music composers say the first electronic music record they heard is actually that Switch on Bach. She did.
Right. Well, I can't find maybe she doesn't post it anymore. Okay, so let's let's go into, did we finish that? Why did we get on to switch on Bach? What made you remind you of, all this technical talk that Frank's doing?
Just the fact that I find it very interesting that when Bach was alive, the first electricity experiments were going on, and somehow the first real popular record is Bach music again, or electronic music record is Bach. So I think maybe from the non-physical point of view, that's like marking something.
Yes, yeah. Bach started it. Then
because that was in 68, and that was the Rai return to essence in 67.
Yes, yeah.
So we have our theories.
Our what? Our theories?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. So I'll just read you the percussion. The percussion, including electro vibes, transducerized marimba, transducerized timpani, bells, chimes, and various drums, gongs, and noisemakers. The percussion, they're all fed to the main board and returned to their section in a mono-monitor mix. The transducerized marimba is a special purpose apparatus that will provide individual pickups for each marimba bar. These pickups, when fed to a resistor chain, would make it possible for any passage covering the full range of the instrument to zip around the audience in a quad orbit, aside from making the instrument more valuable as an orchestral voice due to improved audibility. The multi-keyboards, Hammond organ, grand piano, tack piano, electric harpsichord, Wurlitzer, Fender Rhodes with ring modulator, these are taken direct when purely electronic and transducerized when acoustic, with the exception of the Hammond. The Leslie on the Hammond is to be mic'd in quad and isolated from the other instruments, enabling assorted mysterious ethereal effects to be generated in an audience surround mode. Audience surround in quotes. The Hammond output is also taken direct. The keyboard player monitors his own amp. So that's pretty knowledgeable. I mean, he was trying to create a complex environment, sound environment. Do you know what the Leslie is?
Yeah, there are all types of organs, these electric keyboards and electric organs. Because I think when they had these technologies to generate electronic sound, one way of marketing this new technology was to have these controllers, these keyboards, like organ-looking, or because there were other types of controllers, like the theremin or many other different types. But the industry preferred to do something that was familiar, like organs that maybe had a pitch bend, or sometimes some filters and some special effects that could alter this. And you had like different types of instruments like bells and strings, besides the typical organ and what they call pianos or keyboards that really sound like electronic piano and keyboards. And some of these instruments are now called, some people have them in their sound libraries, like the Hammond organ or some type of special, like the Leslie, all these keyboards.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about the Leslie. What is the Leslie?
Yeah.
I think what type of keyboard, but maybe it's a microphone. Let me see.
Yeah, it says the Leslie isolated backstage will be received via 4 mics. It will not only broadcast the Hammond organ, but will be equipped with a feed from the mix board, making it possible with careful scheduling to use it as a modifying device for vocals and instruments. Because it is being mic'd in quad, material fed through it, when finally broadcast into the theater, will appear to swirl ethereally or hang in space over the audience, the rate of travel being easily controlled by the keyboard player using the speed switch on the Hammond. The receive from the 4 Leslie mics should be tightly keypexed and reconstituted through the EMT to avoid any unpleasant mechanical noises when not in use.
No, I'm looking. Wow. The Leslie was a type of speaker that could also use for some type of effect, because it had some software in which you could affect the audio side. No.
Okay, so we read a lot of Hunch and Toot last time. We started off, the narrator says, there has been a certain amount of scientific speculation recently regarding the possibility that civilization as we know it is perhaps not the first pinnacle of evolutionary achievement to be witnessed on the face of our wretched little planet. In layman's terms, then, perhaps it has all happened before. Perhaps it has happened several times before. Not exactly the same as now, of course, but it most certainly could have happened. And if by chance it didn't happen already, mathematical science has proven that the odds are at least 50-50 that something is bound to happen sooner or later. So remember we went through this and we're laughing about the equivalent Earth, sort of ionic concepts.
Yeah.
Equivalent this, equivalent that. So it begins with Drachma lounging, singing, time is money, but space is a long, long time. And so she's on the coach. That's the supposed beginning, I guess, of the universe. And she's trying to get the giant spider to get intimate with her. And so there's a lot of pleading to Hunch and Toot. She says, yes, my erotically wriggling spider of destiny, take me to your reeking cranny or cave and caress me violently with your horrible scratchy feelers. And while we consummate our perverse rendezvous, I'll explain to you the fantastic details of the work I must do. So she's there trying to get things going for herself with the only other thing around, person or object. Then Dirk shows up with the Force Slings, and he's a human, and he plays around with her, teases her, various dramas. They're singing and playing. So this is the repeat of the solar object that has anti-earthling forces, and then a human shows up to confront them. So let's see. And so on page 45, and so having stated his case to the invaders from Earth, that would be Dirk. Wait a minute. No, Hunch and Toot is stating his case. There ain't nothing to it. So he wants a spider mama. He wants someone to tangle his legs around. And it says, Hunch and Toot squeals away on his fetid little harmonica, dancing his special dance, demonstrating to the Forcelings various possible methods of giant spider-inflicted grievous personal injury, causing them to dash around the planet in a state of frenzied terror. At the point where Hunch and Toot feels he has given them a proper scare, he and the orchestra pauses to announce, I'm going back to my apartment. So the way Zappa writes in 10 years later in Thingfish that Obonics. What's that word?
Ebonics.
Ebonics, the kind of stuff. I don't know if this actually is. He's writing in this black slang back then, long before Thingfish. Is I gwind back to my apartment and whip it till you religious folks come up with something hot and hairy I can identify with. And so, having stated his case to the invaders from Earth, the pathetic, misunderstood giant spider trundles back into his cave. And naught was heard but his busy little multiple appendages whipping it, I guess, masturbating, while on her lonely sofa, Drachma, queen of cosmic greed, pines away for the love of her insect. That reminds me, I played you a song from We're Only for the Money called Harry, You're a Beast, which is the complaint that she's gritting her teeth and not into the sex. But there's Harry. Forgot about Harry back in 1967, so Harry shows up 20 years later, 15 years later, in the Them or Us book. So they're just pining away, and let's see. I know that Dirk thinks that he can fool the spider and fool Drachma, and he attempts it, and I think she catches him. Here's one. The Forcelings have linked their fantastic minds together for the performance of a special secret intergalactic alpha therapeutic cadenza. Here it is. Listen to this.
Wow.
Conversing to each other. Right. What's a cadenza?
It's like you have a sequence of chords.
Yeah.
For example, to create, for example, an ending, or to go from one tonality to another tonality. It's like this sequence of chords. It's called cadenza.
Okay. So this is a special secret intergalactic alpha therapeutic cadenza that the Forcelings do with their linking of their minds. Then it says conversing to each other on the instruments. There's the conversing. Assisted by ingenious stage lighting techniques, the essence of the Earthlings' bold counterplot is revealed. It includes, among other things, a bizarre sacrificial maneuver by which Dirk must win the confidence of the evil space girl by means of his animal magnetism. But many hours ago, I was talking about the conversation between instruments. That's what Zappa has here. Conversing to each other on the instruments. Assisted by ingenious stage lighting techniques, the essence of the Earthlings' bold counterplot is revealed. So,
but here's also the idea that music is therapeutic. That
yeah, right.
Zappa always saw his music as part of the therapy to heal humanity.
Right. So Dirk is trying to seduce Drachma, and he gets pretty far, but then he blows it. He agrees to do something with her, but on condition that she calls off her invasion of the Earth. That's when she gets really mad at him. So then she tries to get Hunchentooth to eat Dirk and the rest of them, but Hunchentooth starts scheming on his own, and he doesn't attack and eat Dirk, but he has another plan, and he's kind of ignoring Drachma's pleas to get rid of these humans. So where would we? So Dirk eventually does a psychiatric analysis of Hunchentooth to figure out his problem. And his problem is let's see, where does it sit? So Dirk promised the Spider of Destiny, Hunchentooth, that he'd get some spider mama for him. So he had gone off to the cave, hung out there. Then something disturbed him. He came out, and he said, "Oh, by the way, you got my spider mama, motherfucker?" Dirk says, no, I got something better. Assuredly says, I got something better. And Hunch and Toot says, shit, ain't nothing better than no spider, pussy boy. Why you lying to me like that? Dirk says, look here, brother. Would I lie to a giant spider such as yourself at a time like this? I am telling you, I got it. Now, what is it you go for in a spider mama? Look here, brother. That's a phrase from some other song. Hunch and Toot, legs, nothing but them legs. So he wants a lot of legs, a lot of appendages on the female spider. And then Dirk says, right, and that's why I'm telling you, I got something that may change your life. But before we go into that, where's he analyzes Hunch and Toot, explains his hang-up.
Psychological problems.
Yeah. I don't know if I could find it. What is it?
It's like, we should do that with Lucifer. Like, what's your big problem? You can sit at the right of the Lord. I mean, let's talk about your psychological.
Yeah, what did your parents do to you? What happened when you were in school that traumatized you? Still looking for well, I don't know if I can find it. So here's something. Oh yeah, right where I got to. That's why I'm telling you, I got something that may change your life. Hunch and Toot says, what's that? Dirk, speaking clinically, let's make a systematic analysis of what the deal is with you. From my own vast experience as one of the greatest minds of our time, I've been able to trace the evolution and structural development of your hang-up as it relates in general terms to the enormous species spider mamma. And let me tell you right now, the trouble with you is, buddy, you have a multiple appendage fixation. Drachma. A multiple appendage fixation. So Drachma, on the couch being ignored, in a very loud whisper says, don't listen to him, Hunch and Toot, telling him not to listen to Dirk. Dirk, unperturbed, continues, now, there are two possible solutions to your hang-up. Hunch and Toot, no shit. How'd the first one go? Dirk smugly says, I'm glad you asked. Listen, there is something very close to us right now, squirming, breathing heavily, tormented by lustful desires, in desperate need of some kind of perverse thrill, and it's got more legs than you ever saw before. Hunch and Toot, in a calculating attitude, says, no shit, lot of legs, huh? Dirk, cheerfully, yes, indeedy. Hunch and Toot, shrewdly, within easy walking distance? Dirk, beaming proudly, just a mere few feet away. Hunch and Toot, hopefully. And it fuck good? Dirk, tactfully, well, let me put it to you this way. If it tactfully, T-A-C-T-F-L-L-Y, not tactfully. Yeah. Well, let me put it to you this way. If it don't fuck good, it eats. Can you dig it? If it don't fuck good, it eats. Hunch and Toot thoughtfully, shit, Earth boy, you all right. Why don't you just go on and show this many-legged fucking thing to me right now? Right now, R-A-T-N-O-W. Dirk, proudly, there you go, Spider-Man. It's all, no. There you go. No. There you go, Spider-Man. It's all yours. Go ahead. Fuck the many-legged thing you see before you. Hunch and Toot says, look here. I know you all might mean well, but get them lights off. That thing I seen squirming out there caused me to lose one of the best giant spider hard-ons I ever done sprung. So he lost a big hard-on.
Inspiration.
Yeah. This is supposed to be on Broadway. Dirk, consoling him, says, well, perhaps his best, because by your rejection of this many-legged temptation, a faint glimmer of hope has appeared, leading me to steadfastly believe that your hang-up can be cured. Hunch and Toot, not convinced. What are you talking about, Earth Boy? Dirk, triumphantly. Simply this. With the aid and assistance of the devout membership of my new and exciting, spectacular, fantastic, non-sectarian, universal, whole wheat religion, all the skills, all the technical know-how, all the warm personal concern of our benevolent foundation will be brought into full force in order to rid you once and for all of the things that have caused your hang-up from in front. Now we're on page 73, and there are 81 pages. Narrator. And so, with an exhilarating religious fervor, the forcelings, that work for Dirk, or the cult members, the forcelings come to the assistance of the distraught Hunchentooth, relieving him of the very cause of his deep-seated emotional problem, as symbolized by his wriggling little spring-loaded appendages, plunging headlong in relieving him of the very cause of his deep-seated emotional problem. And then I guess he plunges headlong into the abyss of his insexual distress in order to liberate him in much the same manner their dismal competitors had attempted for countless centuries on earth. So, who are these dismal competitors? Acting in the sincere belief that they, the forcelings, after so many inept bunglings by those other benevolent foundations, would finally get it right. We return you now to outer space for the results of their labors. So, what happened there? Plunging headlong into the abyss of another, in order to liberate him in much the same manner their dismal competitors had attempted for countless centuries on Earth. So there's the ionic idea of not being so keen on helping your neighbors. They believed and therefore engaged in inept bunglings by those other benevolent foundations. But the Ionettes, or what are they called? The sportlings, the forcelings. They finally got it right. So, Dirk is saying, well, how do you feel, my man? A little bit better, huh? Any scar tissue? Saying that to Hunchentooth. Hunchentooth stretching and trying on his new biped stance. Shit, Earth Boy, this here is all right. Say, wait a minute, just one little minute. I see something looking good to me. Shit. Say, darling, what's your favorite form of recreation? Dirk, apparently unconcerned with the space girl and the insect, addressing the assembled mutants. So Dirk then addresses his tribe. Well, guys and gals, we did it. We actually did it, didn't we? We sure did, Dirk, said the forcelings. Hunchentooth is shouting, hey, Earth Dude, when you all going home? Dirk, looking around for a watch. I'll tell you in a minute. Must have dropped my watch during the big ceremony. Then Hunchentooth craftily, no shit, maybe I can help you all out. Don't you move a pound, long lady. I'm going to be right back. Look here, brother. Look here. Motherfucking price tag's still on them. And they all running, so he went off to complain about something to one of the staff. And they all running like a champ. 21 jewels keep in perfect time. How much bread they giving you for this? For this? And Dirk says, say, what's this? What's this? A Harnelton? Precision jeweled movement? No, precision jeweled movement. Hunchentooth very convincingly. And that motherfucker can be yours, to have and to hold, for a measly old $200 bill. You getting least that much from around here. This a union house, ain't it? You getting at least that much around here. This a union house, ain't it? Dirk, glaze. I've never seen a Harnelton such as this. Forceling number 1, seriously. Come on, Dirk. Forceling number 2, seriously also. Yeah, we got to get back to the Earth. The Harnelton, says Dirk. I must have the Harnelton. So what happens is Hunchentooth proceeds to hypnotize Dirk. He says his forcelings are trying to wake Dirk up. It's not working. And Hunchentooth says, why don't you all just get the fuck out of my way? Before you lose some equilibrium, boy, this here the world of high finance. So it says, Hunchentooth, still dangling the watch with one hand, reaches over with his other and pokes forceling number 2 first in the right eye, then in the left, finally pulling the ping-pong balls over both eyes in a quick tic-tac-toe movement. Drachma sleazes overtly from the coach to Hunchentooth's side, so she starts hanging out with Hunchentooth. That's Gale, that's Dracula. Hutchintoot says, you know, I ain't going to lie to you, baby. I done told you I was going to make both us rich and famous, and you especially, darling, along with a complete all-expenses-paid motherfucking vacation. Dirk, delirious. The Harnelton. I must have the Harnelton. Hutchintoot, continuing. And I'm going to take care of all that good stuff right now. Hey, Earth Dude, when y'all going home? Dirk, in brackets, still delirious, groping for the watch. I can't find my watch. Must have dropped it during the pause. I believe I can detect from your highly coordinated movement a flaming desire to acquire. Now, who's saying that? Second. Oh, okay. So Dirk can't find the watch. Must have dropped it during the confusion. So then Hutchintoot says, I believe I can detect from your highly coordinated movements a flaming desire to acquire this fine quality timepiece I've been dangling front your eyes here. And this motherfucker gone be yours in all its gleaming glory. Not for no $200 bill, not for no $100 bill, not for no $50 bill, and not for no spare change neither. Only this thing this magnificent motherfucker going to cost you is a piece of your mind. And what I means, brother, is when I put this watch in your hand, you and me and my old lady, along with them silly motherfuckers over there, we all going to be going through time and space, back to your silly ass planet, and we all going to clean up on them lame motherfuckers down there. Now, get your ass ready, because you all going to think us over as soon as I whip up this little time machine on you. He's going to whip up a time machine. And the thinking us over, I guess that's some kind of traveling that Hutchintoot can do. So Dirk says, after hearing all that, he's still hypnotized. His mumbling can just barely be heard over the catastrophe around him. He goes, I've got it now. It's mine. The Harlton is mine. Hutchintoot starts singing and dancing. I might have been a slave for the rest of my life, laying in a cave with the spider mama wife, hunchin' and a tootin' on a raggedy old bed with a spider mama leg round the back of my head. But now them legs don't bother me none, 'cause you can see what a job that religion done. Got a mohair suit, and that's all I gonna need. And that's all I gonna need. Just pimpin' all night for the goddess of greed. So it says, Hutchintoot dances over to stage right, gesturing for the audience to make a purchase from the 10-foot replica prophylactic vendor. Hutchintoot escorts Drachma back to the couch, which has been draped with a green velvet cover during the blackout. She sprawls lewdly across the sofa, picks up a small hand mirror, and applies lipstick. Hutchintoot marks the screen control panel, causing a slide to flash on. This slide, 2 big words: fuck greed. Fuck greed.
It's very interesting because in his freakout list, Zappa has a hypnotist as one of his main influences, and I think he's playing with this idea of we always want this new whatever, the new car, the new watch, the new synthesizer, the new guitar, and we are hypnotized by this monster that maybe now is the Android me.
Consumerism. Consumerism.
Yes, and everything is about selling and buying. And,
like I can look through wherever I was. I might have dreamt it, but it was looking through a window at an office, and I don't know what I was going to think. I think I faded out there or hallucinated.
It's good. He says the real cost of whatever you want is actually a piece of your mind. It's not the money value, but
there's a price to pay.
But it's not your mind. It's a piece of
your lucidity.
What? What did you say?
Your recollected lucidity.
Yes.
Because we don't have a mind.
When you have the words. So he puts up this sign, fuck greed. Now, Drachma is called the cosmic queen of greed or something like that. So it could be a spiritual statement, fuck greed, no more materialism, or it could mean something else, literally. I'm just looking up the cast. Dirk, Hunchentooth, the narrator, Drachma, Forcelings. No, don't seem to have that. So as Drachma sprawls lewdly across the sofa and picks up a small hand mirror and applies lipstick, Hunchentooth works the screen control panel, causing a slide to flash on. Fuck greed. Hunchentooth bows and dances off as the lights come up on the orchestra for the closing passages. Dirk and the Forcelings return and join Drachma for their bows, after which they all exit left. Lights come up on narrator the last as he bows, straightens up, points his hand toward the screen in a sweeping gesture, giving the cue for a quaint slide which says, the end. But in the dialogue parts, Hunchentooth is singing, just pimpin' all night for the goddess of greed. Any of you people want a good piece of ass? Form a line on the door because the goods won't last. She got tits like a bank. She ain't never on the rag. If she don't do you right, just salute her like a flag. This ain't no ordinary bitch I gonna interest you in. She the goddess of greed. She gonna make your pecker grin. So just get in that line in the back of this room and get your ass on home, 'cause that's the end of my tune. That is how this horrible opera ends. He becomes a pimp.
With a gangbang.
Yes, with a fucking gangbang for everybody to line up. That is the closing. I mean, what kind of mind? What's Frank attempting here? This is worse than Manipulative satire. It's not even any beef-art robotoys. I mean,
and this is
who is he writing this for?
This
is the what?
What will be the
upgraded version from 64?
Meaning?
Right?
No, wait a minute. No. 64 is upgraded in 69. This is 72. This is another play, but of course it's the same old fucking theme of the global theater, and some alien on another planet wants to capture the planet, but he has to do it from the moon, and some earthling group tries to stop him. But it doesn't end up with organic robotoids melting. It doesn't end up with a happier ending in an orgy in 64, and 69 is the robotoids collapsing. This ends up with this is Zappa. Now this is right when women's lib's just starting. It starts at 69, 70.
I remember. I think it was Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, who talked about the serial relationships we have in modern society. Like you make a line and you pay in the supermarket.
Yeah.
And then the next and the next and the next. I think that's like this type of metaphor that we engage in this type of serial relationships in modern times. Everything is very superficial. It's just like pay and go on the next, or or
pay it and go.
You talk with
goodbye.
Yeah,
you did your bit.
Yeah, you engage most people like that, in serial relationships. It's no more a conversation or a real interaction. It's just like a
remember when I was in Berlin, and Roxy was showing around her neighborhood and the different stores she goes to, and she had nothing to say to the clerks. I'm all friendly, a new human being. I start talking, and Roxy thinks I'm a fucking saint because I'm talking to people, because she never talks to any of them. She just goes around the same boring neighborhood, buys her milk, her dope, her condoms, whatever she fucking buys, and hardly says anything. But I'm there all keen on any little storekeeper.
I was really surprised that Bob will engage conversations with everybody.
I was a tourist. I was an anthropologist. I was trying to learn about the culture. I was doing anthropology.
Yes, and for example, in the bookstore, you start
talking to the person just standing there.
Loud, everybody's looking at you like, what? What is he talking about? He talks about McLuhan and the daughter.
I thought I was on the radio. I never realized I'd gone someplace. I hadn't seen physical space in years. And there, we got this on video, me showing some anonymous customer the picture of Mary McLuhan in the middle of meeting as a massage, with no clothes on. I said, this is the author's daughter. This is Mary McLuhan, right there on the video. And, yes, it was, I noticed that on the beach, you'll see different couples talking to the couple that's on a sun couch beside them. And they're superficially talking, friendly, but these are people who would never talk to anybody in their neighborhood. But when they go on a vacation, they start feeling friendly, and they have to fill in their idle time, so they start talking to strangers and telling them all about their lives. That's the kind of modern hypocrisy, forced idleness, forced sociality on the vacation. So I was used to that superficial, hypocritical tourist lifestyle, so I did that, walking around being friendly like you do when you're traveling. I'm never going to have to see these people again. I have no responsibilities for them, so let's find out all about them and then go bye and never see them again. So Roxy mistook my tourist cliche behavior as a wonderful, saintly being.
Roxana, were they open to talk to Bob? Or they just looked at him?
No, he somehow made them talk about everything, about his life, about the favorite music radio station, and yes.
And whatever. How they'd heard of McLuhan. Yes, I've heard of McLuhan. They all heard of McLuhan. But I didn't always bring up McLuhan. I would bring up Zappa or LaRouche or one of the other holy offices. I'm always staying within the on-duty, propagating my teleplay, my screenplay. Like Frank, he keeps writing the same fucking musical. So this is when women's libs coming in. A feminist would say, this Frank hated feminism. And he's got the evil woman taking over the planet. That's his perception of feminism. This is when it's happening, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. So maybe Frank is satirizing being a misogynist, pretending he's one. Or he's mad at them like McLuhan. They're missing the hidden ground. They're too busy trying to liberate their tribe and missing what's coming to them in the android meme condition. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I was thinking about that because in Mexico City we have such masses of people that we are used to this serial type of engagement with the mass because this makes things like more efficient, or the only way things can function. You don't engage the collective like an individual, but as a mass, and
you have to wade your way through it. You couldn't interrupt the traffic flow by talking. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, everything is done very fast.
Right, and no friendship. And like Carolyn's
yes,
really
and I remember when I first came to Berlin, I will be desperate because, for example, when you pay something at the bakery in Mexico City, the people make they know how much you have to pay, but they make it in their mind, the addition, and they do that very fast. And here it's like everything seemed to be slow for me.
Right. And that made you desperate?
Yes, because it's like I was used to this type of serial engagement that everything is fast and
really quick,
and you don't really talk with the people.
So it slowed down. So you thought, well, maybe I could talk. You weren't ready to talk, but you were. It was being implied that you could talk, and that bothered you. You didn't know how to do that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was not used to it. Everything seemed like slow.
The human scale.
Yeah.
But were you in a rush somewhere? Were you? Did you have to be somewhere? You were in school.
No, but you're just used to this speed.
Rapid
and also,
speed.
for example, I remember in Mexico City, people move very fast in the crowd. And here sometimes, for example, now that it's Christmas and some streets are crowded or the shopping centers or this and that, I get desperate because people don't move as fast as in Mexico City when they're in the crowd.
You get anxious.
Yes.
So you're not used to it.
Carolyn. You know, Carolyn's really good. She makes instant friends all over. She'll make, when you go through the airport and put your suitcase and it goes and gets x-rayed and all that, Carolyn will make a friend out of the person, helping with the suitcase or zapping it with x-rays. Within the 10-second exchange, Carolyn has bonded with them. She does something cute or charming that they like. So they do a double take and look at her, and she's pleasant to look at, and so they fall in kind of a love with her. And I'm walking along sour and grumpy and watching this go on. I've watched it for fucking decades. Yeah, I usually comment on it. Another friend, so the person, they're sort of removed themselves from Carolyn and now dealing with the next person, but if they're listening, they hear the husband go, another friend, another best friend.
Yes, but, you are both very, very special, I think.
Yes, we are the final retrieved humans. We are the first to show up or the last to be here or something like that. I can't remember the order. I've lost my place. I don't know whether we're coming or going. Remember Dirk, and we did this, teaching his religion. He said, remember he was playing off like Zappa does on cliche phrases. We're going to know where it's at because we know which way it went. Remember that conversation? Those lyrics?
Yeah.
Where was that?
I remember that last week.
So he had the same scenario and a different ending. What is the ending? The Hansen Toot, I don't think he's taken over the planet. He's just become a pimp. He's just satisfied. Well, he maybe never wanted to take over the planet. And Drachma is reduced to being a hole, a servicing hole. HOLE, just a hole for people. Let's see, where is the grammar? The grammar lesson. So this is very light. So we are going to go to the Them or Us book, which has all these scripts. They're all going to be lumped together in this new book, where Frank says those interested in the conceptual continuity or are familiar with a lot of things, we're going to find it all put together. So it was Bob's job to make order out of it. Yeah, here it is. Dirk says, that's right, I have a promotional idea that will prove once and for all how heavy we are. time to his meditating cult, and simultaneously show conclusive evidence to every infidel and unbeliever not only where we're at, but also where we're coming from. Now, he gets them to go to space, to go to outer space and go to the Drachma's rock or planet, and the Forcelings object to it, but he zaps them, sort of like Cam Beefheart, just travels them through time and space. But he says, we're going to do something up there so that when we come back, we'll be a bona fide religion. So he says, we're...
Yes, but actually he's portraying what is happening now, like this side sees the others as the infidels, and we are heavier than you. And the other side has this same attitude, and it's so absurd, and he's making a satire of that, and it's amazing.
Yes.
We don't need these endangered aliens to come and try to conquer Earth. It's like humans are actually the ones that are attacking humans. So that's even more horrible.
And he says when they become a bona fide religion at the end of this treatment, this screenplay, they'll all be able to go to airports and hand out leaflets. Now, that's just beginning in L.A. in the late 60s, early 70s. The cults, Scientology,
the Hare Krishnas.
Other cults, Hare Krishnas, they're all starting to hand out leaflets, and this is driving Frank nuts. I mean, he's trying to run a revolution and educate everybody and get them to go to the library and figure out what's going on and not be dupes. And the stupidity is spreading around him as little cults spring up handing out leaflets. So he's lashing out at what's happening in his world right there in 71, 72 in L.A.
Debris.
Yes, the cosmic debris, right.
Debris.
So we're going to find out where we're at, but also where we're coming from. Dirk says, I have meditated longly and deeply, and in doing so I have penetrated to the very core of this marginally imponderable dilemma. It's only marginally imponderable. And I have found the answer. And the answer is, quote, the difference between where you're at and where you're coming from is where you went. The difference between where you're at and where you're coming from is where you went. He used to say in the late 80s that it's not, I don't know what. He said it's when. The big question was when.
This is amazing because that's what Ian is saying all the time. It's like...
Yes.
There is no time.
Ian has made fun. Ian has
really
said things like that.
Back. Because,
right. He would make fun of directional...
Like we're going...
They were going sideways.
And he's always playing with the arness and the isness and the went and the
That's right. That's why when I start reading this, you know what? Let me say this. When I read this kind of stuff by Zappa, and then we point out how Ion does it, I said, that fucking Ion is just zapping, just reading Bob's mind and completing it. Just going a little further than Frank did.
Yeah.
It's uncanny. We find, he was playing with it, doing it, and then we find out, shit, it's all in the scripts of the Holy Offices. It's like Ion scanned me, figured out all the fucking thoughts I engaged, and then just spewed it all back with a speeded up completion. It's pretty amazing.
Yes, it is.
I'm sure he said at one point the difference between where you're at and where you're coming from is where you went. I would not be surprised that you'll find that in some old cash flow. This is what's funny about this. And then he says, so they're going to go to the moon, and he says, precisely. When we get back from when we went, everybody will know where we're at. When we get back from when we went, and before it is where you went, now it's when you went, everybody will know where we're at. So he didn't tell them then that they would have to go to the moon, and they were quite shocked later. He says, well, here's the plan. We're all going to the moon, or to some rock, mystery rock, where Drachma was. So Dirk wanders off. He fades into nothing. Drachma is trapped in a brothel, and Hunsentoot's doing okay, and is that all? And the Forcelings, I don't know, maybe they were killed. I don't know what happened to the Forcelings. Let's see.
They got their drops and ascended.
Yeah. Let's see. What happened is that very carefully the Forcelings grouped themselves around Hunsentoot, waiting reverently with bowed heads until Dirk gives the secret signal, like Frank would give secret signals, whereupon they pounce on the unsuspecting spider and rip off all of his arms and legs except the practical ones, tossing them around the stage while the orchestra plays some terrifying passage. Strobes flash, and Drachma stands near the sofa looking aghast as the scene blacks out and the lights come up on the narrator. So they ripped him apart, and I think he liked it. He didn't object too much to that. It says, and so with an exhilarating religious fervor, the Forcelings come to the assistance of the distraught Hunsentoot, relieving him of the very cause of his deep-seated emotional problem, as symbolized by his wriggling little spring-loaded appendages, plunging headlong into the abyss of his insexual distress, in order to liberate him in much the same manner their dismal competitors had attempted for countless centuries on earth, acting in the sincere belief that they, the Forcelings, after so many inept bunglings by those other benevolent foundations, would finally get it right. We return you now to outer space for the results of their labors. And we already read that. And we end up. What did the Forcelings, are they around in the end scene? I don't see them mentioned. Hunsentoot dressers swore. Well, the Forcelings are trying to save Dirk from being hypnotized by the watch. That's the last thing they're engaged. They're trying to save their leader, and they fail. It says, Dirk stumbles blindly into the wings, fetishing his watch. And doesn't say any more about the Forcelings. So, the Concentration Moon. You heard me play that song, Concentration Moon, eh? Did you like that? From We're Only for the Money?
Yes.
Concentration Moon. Moon Unit. I wonder if Moon has ever thought about the conceptual continuity and how her name fits into it. If I ever see her, I'll ask her that. You know that you're just a fragment of a larger theatrical layout by Frank? You're one of the themes? See what she says. I'm on her Facebook. I don't know. Maybe I have to become a member. I will ask her. I can present this on her Facebook page.
Yeah.
I will be quickly banned with my rudeness. But we're used to that. The rest of the people will see it, and they'll know the value of what I did.
Because you're so heavy, Edling boy.
Yes, the wimplings. The Ionettes are wimplings. Cannot even come up with something to ask Ion. Wimplings. Not you two. The rest of them. They don't even show up anymore because Ion ain't here. We are people still listening on the computer, but the turnout here when Ion's not around really shows you what this is all about. It ain't about Carol and Bob's charisma. It's about Ion. It's the only thing worth showing up for. They put up with it. They put up with us. Looking at Sarah, she asked, I wonder if the dissonant ambient funk was recorded separately from the dialogue. That probably. She goes, ooh, John Cage and Norman McLaren. Norman McLaren was an animator for the National Film Board. Then she goes, Verez. Then she goes, Roxy Harmonium. Triad of 4th and 5th. Then she says, Cadence. Then number 125 says, Dirk, did Frank write Boogie Nights? Remember Dirk Diggler? I saw Boogie Nights. Then he says, Forcelings. Then he says, Bob, you're so country. Everybody talks to everybody in the country. Oh, I'm a country person. I'm a rural overalls wearing person.
You're the Marlboro Man.
Marlboro Man. Yeah, ride into town and make friends with everybody and hand out cigarettes. 125 says, quote, ripped off all his arms and legs except for the practical ones. Ha, ha, ha. They like that line. The Forestlings knew which ones not to rip off. Now, our task is this awesome book called Them or Us, subtitled The Book by Frank Zappa, and has a picture of Frank with his chest hairs, no shirt on, and he has a nice, I don't know, a 40s hobo kind of suit jacket. And he's got straggly hair. It's 1984, and he's holding up his hand in a green glove. Them or Us, Frank Zappa, copyright 1984, all rights reserved. He says, forward, this cheesy little homemade book was prepared for the amusement of people who already enjoy Zappa music. It is not for intellectuals or other dead people. It is designed to answer one of them.
You have to get happy or get out.
Yeah.
It's all for your entertainment.
I mean, Roxy was just starving in Berlin. There was no more live people. She was surrounded by dead people. She wasn't sure if that's what was happening, but now she could see that is what was happening. And so he says, the book is designed to answer one of the more troubling questions related to conceptual continuity. Quote, how do all these things that don't have anything to do with each other fit together, forming a larger absurdity? Well, I think my pattern of the concentration camp is what we're going to see here. Your enjoyment, no, not exactly that. It's going to be updated. It says, your enjoyment of the contents could be enhanced by hearing the music described in the text. The album shown on the back cover contains some of these songs. It's got 4 albums. Francesco Zappa's album called Them or Us, Zappa's Old Masters collection, and Thingfish. Other songs derived from Joe's Garage and Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch. This is a storybook. It is not a rock and roll biography. This is the only real and official Frank Zappa book. All other books attempting to trade on my name are unauthorized and full of misinformation. This book is dedicated to all of the fans who have made the last 20 years of large-scale absurdities possible. This book, see, large-scale absurdities. This book used to be called Christmas in New Jersey. Now, I read that last week, so I hope you can handle that. So it starts off with Francesco, 250 years ago, talking to the Duke of York, and we went through that. Then Francesco meets up with Shemp the alchemist, and then they go to Broadway. They go to New York, 1984. We figured out that Francesco is Frank. Frank is telling us that he's like Beefheart, a real phenomenon of the mystery landscape, and way more than people suspect, and he's lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Then we went into the beginning of the universe, where Uncle Willie, it says Uncle Willie is seen relaxing on a grotesquely tufted maroon sofa, smoking a cigar. On his knee is the dummy, now with a face just like his, like Uncle Willie's, dressed in a flowing white miniature robette. Well, reading one of the Zappa books, when Frank was 7 or 8 or 6 years old, he would take Carl, who was the second brother. Bobby was a few years, Carl might have been 9 years, 8 years younger than Frank, whereas Bobby was only 3 years younger. So this younger brother, he would sit him on his lap and do puppetry or ventriloquism, fake ventriloquism. The very thing that Uncle Willie is doing with the dummy is what Frank did with his little brother. Interesting point, right? He entertained the family with this, improvising stuff, whatever the young mind would come up with. So there's you have Zappa is sitting there thinking about how he used to have his brother on his lap. Then he said, okay, now it's 40 years later. We're surrounded by organic robotoids. So at best, I'm going to be a weird duck thing called weird pervert called Uncle Willie, and I'm not going to have my little brother. I'm going to have a fucking automated dummy on my lap, right? So he's updating what he did, what the scenarios of his life, overlaid large-scale absurdities.
Yes, you also mentioned before this that under the electric environment and the android meme, everybody became this type of organic robotoid.
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a cyborg. Most humans are in this state of organic robotoid situation.
That was in the Gutenberg galaxy. Everybody was a robot by, 1600, 1700. The print visual space.
Oh, no, even before electricity, we were already organic robotoids.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I said the Gutenberg galaxy. I'm talking 500 years ago was when we became organic robots. And we became angelic. He writes in, posthumously published, so we don't know how much he wrote, but it could be considered it. But Bruce Powers, not Bruce Powell, but Bruce Powers, former CIA guy, he's a professor at Niagara University in upstate New York. He was one of the last guys to engage McLuhan. In his book, he talks about angels versus robotism. Angelism versus robots. And angelism seems to be aligned with the Gutenberg galaxy, and robotism is the electric fate. But McLuhan said in 1968 that robots were a product of visual space. So it could be a product. It could be a case of hendiades, one by means of two. But yes, the electric age is implying a liberation from the robot world. You had to be a robot to listen to Ed Sullivan every day, every Sunday. Once you have digital do-it-yourself media, you aren't in the dancing to the same tune as everybody else.
Yes, like they will say same program in the same channel at the same time.
Right.
Like everybody will just program their lives to adapt to the TV programs. Yeah. And now you said with the video recorder, TV was made for the video recorders that were taping the program.
They're watching it. Okay, so the dummy wants to bring in the short girl and squat the magical pig. Now, Frank in 70, 71, 72, that would be, he broke up the mothers and then he reformed them with Flo and Eddie from the Turtles and put in a couple of new musicians like George Duke. So they went around 70, 71 acting out this weird scenario of the big sofa and short girl and squat the magical pig. Did little sketches. And the sofa was there at the beginning of the universe. So that's in this book. So that's an early theatrical performance piece. So that's developed a little bit. I can't read all the details, but then that's the end of chapter 1. Uncle Willie, this is where old Zircon, at the end of chapter 1, Uncle Willie says, darkness fell suddenly in all forests as canceled leeches and transoms swarmed ashore, devouring bushes while they slept. Farmers walked off and got lost because there was no stars, not even the moon. Then, from a distant cave, there's the cave thing again, the measured tread of cloven hoof on darkened gravel. Old Zircon, the phased-out Byzantine devil, dressed in a costume of that period except for his feet. There's your Pergamon obsession, Roxy, the Whore of Babylon, or the King of Babylon, old Zircon. So he's including ancient religion, hocus pocus. They have the exterior of old Zircon's cave set in a dark, barren landscape of infinite gravel. Old Zircon says, looks like the leeches have ate up every bush. Bet this place will look funny when the lights go back on. Old Zircon launches into a charming sort of cloven hoof tap dance routine, producing sparks which ignite the local moss. An enormous bonfire, totally out of proportion to the amount of fuel available, springs up around him. Uncle Willie and the dummy stand nearby unnoticed. I remember reading this last week. You guys remember this?
Yes.
Yeah. Uncle Willie.
I remember Uncle Willie.
Yeah. Uncle Willie says, old Zircon danced his, quote, special dance until sparks ignited all adjacent moss. One by one, dangerous-looking unknown animals make their way to Zircon's fire. With a snap of his fingers, he produces an assortment of primitive musical instruments and proceeds to do his version of a Las Vegas lounge act for them. For the animals, I guess. Uncle Willie says, all fierce and murderous beasts assembled to a large red fire just outside the cave. Old Zircon beat his special drum, blew his special horn, and strummed his special guitar. Then he sang in a deep voice until the smoke turned to stone, forming several lumpy new mountains. So his voice altered the landscape around him, one of which could talk.
Yeah,
so then
the frequency
right.
until the
He's creating.
Became stone.
Yeah.
Ah!
Smoke to
right.
stone.
The Zircon is one of these old ascended guys who knows how to manipulate his mouth to make realities. So in chapter 2, it goes into Billy the Mountain, and that story is on Just Another Band from L.A., 1971, and Billy the Mountain. So it lays out the Billy the Mountain story, and Billy the Mountain wants to go on a vacation, takes his wife, Ethel, the tree, and they just they trudge across the desert, destroying everything. So it's another destructive motif, another monster wrecking the human scale. So that goes on for a while. And then there starts to be TV broadcasters. So Frank would take sort of well-known names locally or different situations, and the character would be almost George Putnam. So instead of having the character be George Putnam, he would say almost George Putnam or almost Barbara Walters. These were characters. And almost George Putnam is talking about the destruction that Billy the Mountain's making. Jerry Lewis holds a telethon to raise funds for all the crashed places that Billy the Mountain caused. Is Frank mean a metaphor for what he's doing? Is he crashing things like a monster? Then you bring in the other character of that era, Studebaker Hawk, superhero of the current economic slump. And I think we did him. Then there's a little throwback to Squat and the Short Girl. Old Zircon. Then it gets into the next character after Studebaker Hawk. He gets into Gregory Peccary. And he's a trendmonger. He manufactures new trends. So that becomes the content, already was the content of the Baby Snakes video where Bruce Bickford made all this amazing clay animation following Gregory Peccary's scenario. So that was written up, 12, 13 years before. Now, my first checkoff. So Frank is going to deal with the same idea that there's no time, or time cancels itself out, so we're not going anywhere. So in Gregory Peccary, in his trend-mongering office, invents the calendar. So here's Frank coming at time at another way. And with that, Old Zircon says, and with that, Gregory turned and strode nonchalantly into his dinky little office with the desk and the catalog and the very hip water pipe, and proceeded with a vigor and determination known only to piglets of a similarly diminutive proportion, proceeded to single-handedly invent the calendar. Old Zircon says, Gregory Peccary, his eyes rolled heavenward, and his shiny little pig hoofs on the desk. With his eyes rolled heavenward, and his shiny little pig hoofs on the desk, Gregory ponders the significance of eternity and fractional divisions thereof, as mysterious angelic voices sing to him from a great distance, providing the necessary clues for the construction of a thrilling new trend. Sounds like me making my chart. And my chart is an attempt to enter time, right, and lay out changes in duration, in the duration of spans. So Zircon says, and thus the calendar, in all of its colorful disguises, was presented to the bored and miserable people everywhere. Gregory issued a memo on it, whereupon the entire contents of the stenopool identified with it strenuously and worshipped it, the memo, as a way of life. Or maybe they worshipped the calendar, maybe that's what it meant. and took their little pills by it and went back and forth from work by it and paid their rent by it. And before long, they were even having birthday parties at the office by it. Because now at last, Gregory Peccary's exciting new invention had made it possible for everyone to find out how old they were. See, there's your programming of the environment. That's Frank looking at a new invention and showing how it altered people, conditioned their behavior, but all the time fitting into the concepts he laid out 20 years earlier in Captain Beefheart versus the Grunt People in terms of no time. Right? Do you get that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, Gregory...
no, he was really into a bigger agenda of just being a rock star. That's something...
Right. McLuhan writes about how Erasmus hijacked the printing press to make a new kind of classroom education. Like Zappa says, holy shit, I'm this talented musician. I can go into pop culture and wreak havoc on it. Because if I play good enough music, they'll let me do it. So he was like the siren, as you've said before, in Ulysses Travels. His guitar, his music could get an audience that he could then play with. So Old Zircon says, unfortunately, there were people who simply did not wish to know, how old they were. And that's why on his way home from the office one night, Gregory was attacked by a rage of hunchmen. Hunchentupa, these are hunchmen. Making his way through the evening traffic, Gregory notices that the other vehicles which crowd and bump his little red car are all inhabited by slowly aging, very hip young people. That's me and Carolyn, slowly aging, right? Very hip young people. So again, he's making fun of me, who appear to be casting sinister glances toward Gregory through their glinting, acid burnt-out eyeballs, trying to run him off the road or make him bump into something, giving strong evidence of hostile aggression. To elude them, Gregory takes the short forest exit off the expressway. They zoom after him in all manner of cars, trucks, garishly painted buses, and motorcycles. Gregory takes a bumpy trail off the main short forest road, which leads him up the side of a famous and conveniently placed mountain, into a strange cave on the edge of a cliff, not far from a little twisted tree, with eyes on it. Meanwhile, the enraged hunchmen and hunchwomen rumble through the short forest until, realizing the little swine had escaped, they decide to park their steaming vehicles in a circular pseudo wagon train formation and have a love-in. So there it is. There's the Celestials' agenda. Now it's part of the culture in America. Because under the influence of a fantastic amount of trendy chemical amusement aid, these hunchmen and hunchwomen, they perform lewd acts, rip each other off for small personal possessions, and dance with depraved abandon in the vicinity of a 6-foot pile of transistor radios, each one tuned to a different station. So, Zircon is dealing with Gregory. Then the greatest living philosopher shows up, Quentin Robert de Nameland. And he is in some of the skits of this period we're talking about in the early 70s. Quentin Robert de Nameland. See, you got the modified singing cowboys doing stuff. Uncle Willie doing stuff with the dummy. Studebaker Hawk. He falls off the mountain, gets injured. Billy the Mountain wrecks him for a while. Then you go into Chapter 3. We did this. Buddy is dealing with the scientist named Hertzberg, and they were looking at the new machine called P-to-E conversion. I have ticked off here. Well, let's look at it another way. Time is not like what people think it is. It doesn't start over here and then go over there. Time is just one big lump of stuff. Everything is happening all the time. I can prove it to you. When you're watching TV on Channel 9, there's always something else on Channel 5, right? Now, have you guys gone? Still there?
No. Yes.
Good.
We're
Good.
here listening.
Yeah, we did that. We did that Channel 9, Channel 5 stuff. So, so a lot of stuff about particles and chopping up waves, the physics of that, which is Zappa filling out what he said back in 1970.
But I like the phrase you said before, this trendy chemical entertainment. Like I never thought about it, but we always have, besides what we call entertainment, there are these substances that most people engage to relax and to have fun. It's not only the entertainment, but the substance plays a big role in the societies.
Yeah, what is that? That's people not wanting to talk to each other, so they must occupy their mouths with confection, is it called? Comestibles to
consumable.
So they
combustibles.
No, there's something called comestibles or something. I don't use that word too much. I remember looking it up about 6 months ago. Anyways, they have to keep their mouths busy. So as they get more and more leisure industry activities, leisure society, they're involved with people, got to interact. But if you're drinking, smoking, eating, you don't have to talk as much. That's my present interpretation of your scenario there.
Yeah, the chemical entertainment.
Yes. So Uncle Willie had died, crashed in the Christmas tree, but then he came back. So Buddy Wilson is trying to figure out how to explain it to his children. So he says, to mess with anything natural, if you mess with anything natural and you can believe there's going to be something supernatural coming out of it, every time they run that machinery over there, they could be messing up our entire chronological ozone layer. And when you mess around with somebody's chronology, you stand a very good chance of putting that sucker out of sequence. Somebody that's already been here before might come back. So he's doing that. And they propose, with Buddy's ability to bring ghosts back, that they bring in Elvis Presley and Jimi Hendrix. Then the Joe's Garage scenario, where everybody's criminalized and music is outlawed, so people can be controlled and categorized. Our criminal institutions are full of little creeps like you who do wrong things, and many of them were driven to these crimes by a horrible force called music. So Zappa in the late 70s was writing about music as becoming a figure of terrorism. That's because we're about to move into the extreme Android meme extension of MTV, of television, which would affect the music industry, a big deal. So, like Frank is defending the oral culture, the musical culture, before he adapts to MTV. He's saying that they're going to outlaw music. Maybe just a phase of paranoia on Frank's part.
Well, but in a way they already did with this short format. Like he was finding this amazing music on his own, but he was surprised that it was not presented on the media. Right. So in a way they already have this type of subtle censorship of real music. They're promoting only the music that goes with the substances that sell.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and Zappa used to say that whatever substances were being used would determine the kind of musical climate, the type of hits. So he then goes into a lot of Joe's Garage stuff, about the dilemma of, what is her name? Mary. Mary's a Catholic girl. She gets bored with her little town, gets bored with Joe. So she goes on the road with the Mothers or a band. Doesn't say particularly the Mother's Invention, but it does name some of the members who were in there at one time or another. And Larry, remember Larry from the Pony World, 20 years before, he's a character in this Joe's Garage part. Who is Larry? Also, there's much commentary by the Central Scrutinizer in this period. Larry. Larry singing, we could jam. So who is this Larry guy? Don't see where Larry comes from. So maybe he just popped in. We're not supposed to know that he was with the Green Women for a while. The Green Cult. So Mary goes and becomes a crew slut, and then she ends up in the first part when she's going to the Catholic club. She's mentored by Father Riley. Well, Father Riley gets defrocked, and he ends up in Miami, someplace leading wet T-shirt contests, and that's how he and Mary re-meet. So, still Joe stuff. Joe's in jail. He gets pluked, constantly pluked, and the Central Scrutinizer says, so Joe's learned how to speak German. He goes into this place and he sees these little kitchen machineries dancing around with each other. And he sees this one that looks like it's a cross between the industrial vacuum cleaner and a chrome piggy bank with marital age stuck all over its body. It's really exciting. And when he sees it, he bursts into song. So the industrial vacuum cleaner was seen dancing on the cover of Chunga's Revenge in 1970, that album. So this song is called Fuck Me, I'm Clean. You get that? Fuck Me, I'm Clean. And it introduces the robot Cyborg. And Cyborg's hanging out with Joe and maybe Larry. And Central School.
But we see how this, the coitus team...
Yes.
Contact, very important in A&M.
Yes. Very what?
Important in A&M.
The coitus. Well, Frank's ambivalent. He's making fun of all the coitus going on. Like Cyborg, he actually gets broken. Cyborg, the automated something, he gets pluked here and there, and it's always getting broken, screwed up. So Frank is dealing with the disservices of the counterculture he had a little influence on. It's now the ground has changed. The counterculture ain't what it used to be. It's not as relevant as the counterculture. And Frank's looking how to be in any environment. He's determined to be a solitary artist, so he gets influenced by me and keeps coming up with new stuff that we make relevant. We attempt to translate into public mortar. Frank just keeps pumping out the data. So I have ticked off here. Joe's saying, this is exciting. I never pluked a tiny chrome-plated machine that looks like a magical pig with marital aids all stuck all over it, such as yourself before. So, back 8 years before, the pig and squat and the sofa were happening. Well, the pig theme comes back with Joe's Garage at the end of the 70s. I have ticked off this. Joe picks up the dummy, flicking bits of cake spew off the side of his mouth. The camera pans left to find Uncle Willie seated at a small control console with cables running across the soundstage floor, connected to the rear end of Cyborg. So there's the programming committees. Uncle Willie's got some technical version of it. The lyrics of a song are, blow job, give me that blow job, give me the chromium cob. Would you write that stuff, Bert?
No.
Are we looking at a deranged mind here, just fetishizing body processes, damaged by the Pope?
Well, he's using shock value for a point.
Yeah, and the president is Interior Oval Office, the president, with his handkerchief wadded up over the receiver. He's attempting to talk in a low voice. Steam rises from a freshly served hot toddy near the jar of jelly beans on the desk. Reagan liked jelly beans. And the president's doing a William Lewis. He's calling up people randomly. So he says to this anonymous person, your mother sucks cocks in hell. Would this have been allowed to happen? Would the people who arrested Lenny Bruce, would they end up redoing it with Frank? Having the president saying your mother sucks cocks in hell? That's all they have, just that. We're just supposed to get a glimpse of the president doing his business. Then they go back to Cyborg's apartment, and one of the characters is, get this, another swipe at me. Another mocking of me. The character is, where'd it go? Oh yeah, in L.A. earlier, in the early 70s scripts, L. Ron Hoover, the leader of the Church of Appliantology. Just a second, I'll look for this disgusting theme. Okay, why is it lost? Here it is. Cyborg shares an apartment with a modified gay Bob doll. Gay Bob doll. Why? Why, Frank? What, did I hurt your feelings? Why have me in and out of the fucking movie scripts? Bob guy, gay Bob doll. What's that? What's that about, Frank? So we go now to Chapter 4. There's 11 chapters. And this is the central scrutinizer. Now, Father Riley B. Now Joe is in jail. And Father Riley B. Jones. Is that the same? What was the father called before? Still looking for the name of the priest. Still looking. Yeah, it's Father Riley, same name. Okay, Father Riley B. Jones. So he's trying to administer to Joe, who's now in prison for making music. So that's still the Joe's Garage stuff. Now, Buddy becomes sort of like a Zappa character, like Billy Sweeney. He builds things. His device to bring people back from the dead. He gets irritated by the device after a while. the social disservices. He can't be left alone. He must have a public role for changing the lives of everybody with the new technology. We'll probably be the only people that hide from our inventions. We will not want to take credit for it. Right? Can you dig that?
Yeah.
It's gone stealth. So we're now there's a big fight in the Madison Square Garden. It's between the real Jesus and I think Mr. Zircon. But maybe Zircon, is he too old? Yeah. It's says the big fight. Old Zircon imitates Hitler's jolly jig, delivering a devastating punch which duplicates the angle and velocity of the Hertzberg-Bemmelmann Sig High. So the velocity of their Sig High salute is matched by the angle of Zircon's punch. But where was that? There's also a bit about Mr. Bemmelman's. If you were following Hollywood scandals in the 80s, Bemmelman's was a big studio director, and he got caught stealing money or something. So the other place, okay. In the glare of some horrible unknown beam, we see expressions of panic on the faces of the four scientists. One of them yells, "Shut it off, for God's sake." Scientist 2 says, "We can't shut it off, it's too late." Whereupon an exact instant replay occurs. The first scientist repeats, "Shut it off," etc., etc. The same instant replay happens 3 more times. Just when it starts to get boring, we see a delayed replay of the first entrance of the unknown doctor and the shot of slightly wrong middle-aged janitor, abruptly intercut with portions of the "shut it off" dialogue. Remember in McLuhan's review of Naked Lunch, Ticket Express, Ticket to Implode or whatever, he's saying that Burroughs is advocating hitting the shut off button. So we could so these are profiles of psychological types, like on my chart. This is his version of the chart. What do you think of that, guys?
Wow.
So somebody, the almost Dan Rather, reports that as a result of their experiment, a most grievous time-space aberration has occurred, creating an irreversible chronological dysfunction. Now anything can happen. Now anything can happen at any time, from any time, and for any reason or no reason at all, with no regard for continuity, as science has just done away with it forever. Science's products do away with the visual space guidelines. So then you go into Chapter 5, starts off with Carl Sagan, and Billy is hanging out as a roadie. Cecil his horse world is coming back. He's pretty excited. Then they get sent up in what's his name? Who wrote that book? No. You mentioned something he made in 1970. Roxy. Can't remember. Can't even remember what we're talking about. Why am I sitting here talking into the microphone? What am I exploring here? Just kidding. I'm on top of it. Don't worry. Back to the Oval Office, the president, as he might have looked in 1955 as a host in Death Valley days, he's now consulting with his advisors on the significance of this matter. I guess it's Billy has got on the moon. Is that where we're at? Yes. So Billy announces he's going to the moon. Then Reagan comes on. And somebody says to him, "That thing, it's in the air again." The president begins to recite the Lord's Prayer, pausing briefly to order another hot toddy. He is extremely perturbed by the possibility that the X-1 might reach the moon before the government's very own hand-picked, corn-fed, all-American astronaut. He orders that the X-1 must be destroyed and plans for the one and only official U.S. government lunar landing be drastically accelerated. So I guess X-1 is Billy's plane. There's a montage of obviously cheap stock footage, jet fighters scrambling, radar stuff, anti-aircraft guns twirling around, factories working overtime, 1930s-style telephone operators violently jabbing at overloaded switchboards, etc. So we get into a suburban scene with Alan, has a home in Encino, works for famous international pictures, and he's got ridiculous kids and a ridiculous wife who eventually wants a divorce. Ghostly occurrences. Here's an item treated in a humorous way by the newscaster regarding ghostly occurrences in Palo Alto, ending with one of those horrible lighthearted news comments about the number of shopping days left before Halloween. I think I had something Frank was going to say about that. During a pause in Horace's computations, we hear this delightful sounds of his enthusiastic crystal lunch consumption over the intercom, followed by a series of even more disgusting sound effects, crunching bone matter and tearing human tissue mingled with agonized groans vaguely reminiscent of the transformation sequences in the movie American Werewolf in London. Are you guys still with us?
Yes.
Yeah, did you? No, you didn't get knocked out, did you, Eliza? I mean, Roxy. Is that you, Roxy, right there?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, you
I
got
dropped out.
Right. Do you have anything you want to say about what we're saying here? We're getting into cocaine decisions. So we're getting into the 80s here, and the characters in this big extravaganza are Buddy, Uncle Willie, the Dummy, Abraham Lincoln, Father Riley B. Jones, Old Zircon, the Real Jesus, Hertzberg and Bemelmans, Hitler, Billy, Cecil and Larry, Muammar Gaddafi, all dressed to look like screenwriters, costume and set designers, directors and cameramen, etc. So we're getting this Hollywood executive, who's Alan, who's a disaster in his family, and doing a lot of cocaine decisions. So in Chapter 6, look at this. We cut to the interior of a special effects warehouse. As we pan around the room, we notice, haphazardly stored in a corner, the incredibly fraudulent papier-mâché spider from Missile to the Moon. So the spider is now just papier-mâché, the spider motif. That's how it appears anyways. Alan is talking to Roger, who is negotiating a rental deal on a used giant squid, loudly defending its maneuverability, efficiency, and seaworthiness. Roger shows traces of light green clown hair. Gretchen, Alan's wife, her toenails are dripping with flesh-colored beige enamel. We hear her humming her favorite parts of the Zappa song, Baby Take Your Teeth Out, as she works. Then this is early 80s when people were getting word processors. So on the desk is the newest, most advanced, most expensive word processor in Hollywood. It doesn't say whose office it is, unless later. Now we come to Harry. wants to look at Channel 13 so he can watch the rubber tongue when it comes out of the puffed and flabulent Mexican rubber goods mask next time they show the movie The Bernuca. So he's buying CDs and videos. Francine. Alan's shrinking at Francine for some reason. Or just yelling out her name. I think that's his secretary. Reference to Elephant Man. The movie tonight is Steaming Poop Shoot. So Barney and his wife have these little projects going. Florence, the wife Florence, another wife, enters carrying a tray with cookies and 2 tall glasses of milk with long straws in them, announcing Din Din. So the kid Jimmy with his father Barney, and the mother is, I guess, Florence. Yes, Barney. We did Barney way back there. No, that was Buddy Wilson. So Barney's a new guy. Barney is incredibly ugly. Did I get that right? He has been affected by the AIDS virus through Galut Colonia, which we're going to, the Thingfish theme. His family, he and his wife and son, have to wear bags over their heads. They got zapped by one of these Dr. Evil's concoctions. His son is saying, "What did you do, Dad?" Barney says, "Believe it or not, I worked the smoke machine on the last Big Kiss tour." How's that for a resume? I worked the smoke machine on the last Big Kiss tour. There's a reference to Annie Sprinkle. I don't know if you guys know who Annie Sprinkle is. Look her up. She's a porno star, entertainer, performance artist. So Jimmy, still baffled by what a Kiss tour was supposed to be, asked his father, "Well, are you still in show business now or what?" "Yes, Jimmy, I'm still in show business. You may never see me on TV or in the movies. You may never hear me on the radio or hear about my activities in the theater. But I am, even today, the most important show business figure in the entire Southern California area." Can you guess what he does? What does Barney do?
What?
Why would he be the most important showbiz figure in Southern California in the early 80s? Because he's a drug dealer. He supplies the cocaine for everybody. All the executives, all the pluking executives that Frank makes fun of in Cocaine Decision. So there's a cocaine plague going on.